Hey y'all, welcome to That Tennessee Feeling. How is everybody? Did y'all have a good August? I can't believe it's September. I just can't. Time goes by so much faster when you get older. Don't get old. It's not worth it. I hope everybody's enjoyed the podcast so far. I know Appalachian Way did really well. A lot of you guys seem to be really excited for that one, so thank you. You can check me out on Spotify, Apple, or Google. Any reviews are appreciated. Any reviews. So thank you for those of you who have been reviewing. Don't forget that there are social media pages. Facebook group and page. TikTok, which a lot of y'all seem to be on TikTok. And Instagram. And it's just a way for me to connect with you guys over all different parts of Tennessee or Tennessee lovers, even if you don't live in the state. And it's just a fun way to see what's going on in Tennessee today. As I'm recording this, go Vols. They're going to play tonight. Although I am really annoyed at the whole Spectrum Disney thing. What? I just want to see football, and you guys are being butts. So thank you. All right, now that that's out of the way. So today I'm going to talk about something that is well known for Tennessee, and well known just in general in the South. And I'm going to talk about something that is, well, I guess we're going to call it home to Tennessee. It's located in Tennessee, but I don't know where it is really located. I'm talking about the Bow Witch. That's right, we're going to talk about Kate. So, you've probably heard of the Bow Witch, especially if you live in Tennessee. Everybody knows about the Bow Witch. It's located in Adams, Tennessee. It's in northwest Robertson County. I've been quite a few times. It's interesting. It's very interesting. It's very weird. The caves are their own downright creepiness. So, who is the Bow Witch? What is the Bow Witch? Why is the Bow Witch in Tennessee? So, as far as who is the Bow Witch, she goes by Kate, or it goes by Kate, not really sure. Who dealt with the Bow Witch? The Bell family. John Bell Sr. resided with his family along the Red River, which is in near the town of Adams in Tennessee. And from 1871 to 1821, his family and the local area came under attack by a entity that was able to speak, affect movement, and shapeshift. So you're talking poltergeist, demon, witch, ghost. We don't really know. But it really terrorized the family. They also thought that the spirit might be clairvoyant, which is like being in more than one place at one time. Sorry, for whatever reason that got me. And it kind of captured people's attentions. This thing did this to this family. You can actually find a book about it. Authentic History of Bow Witch. It was published in 1894 by Martin V. Ingram. And that is honestly the most widely regarded first full-length record of this legend and primary source on how to treat things like this. Now, the people in the work are real, but a lot of people think it might be a historical fiction or fraud. It's really one of those you get to decide on your own. But let's really talk about what happened. So we're going to call it a poltergeist, because I don't really know what it is. And the name was Kate. And the reason that they know the name is Kate, or got the name Kate, is because an entity claimed at one point to be old Kate Batts, who was a person and a witch. And the hauntings really began in 1817. John Bell witnessed an apparition of a strange creature resembling a dog with the head of a rabbit on his land. He fired and missed. Or did he? We don't know if he missed. It just disappeared. So, did he hit it? Maybe. Did he not? We don't know. But John's son, Drew Bell, also approached an unknown bird on the fence and found to be an extraordinarily big size bird for this area. And it just flew off as well, disappeared. The daughter began to see people climbing in an oak tree. Dean, an enslaved person by the Bell family, reported seeing a large black dog on the evenings that he would go and see his wife. And so people were seeing activity all over this property. And it depended on who you were as to what you saw, an animal or a human. But it was bad. I mean, it was just kind of getting out of hand. But eventually the activity moved to the house itself, the Bell house. And you could hear knocking on doors and walls, gnawing on the beds, invisible dogs fighting, which to me is probably the creepiest one of all. And of course, the classic haunted house sound, chains along the floor. And I don't get that. I don't get the chains one. And there's a lot of reasons. Like, people didn't... normal people probably didn't have chains in their house. I say normal. But could it be reminiscent of when, the South sucked and there was slavery and they had slaves walking through the house and that's the chain you're hearing? Is that just a thing that people say because it sounds good? Like, why are there always chains? Why are there chains in the walls? Why are there chains on the floor? Sorry, pet peeve. I just don't understand the chains. So the house is starting to get a little weird. John Bell began to experience paralysis in his mouth. So, now he's being physically affected. And, the sheets began to get pulled off the bed when people were sleeping. People were getting their hair pulled and scratched. And poor Betsy, she was like the epicenter of this witch's attention. She got it all. She got slapped. She got her hair pulled. She got pinched. She got stuck with pins. So this poor child didn't like her. So what did the Bell family do? Well, they didn't know what to do, so they turned to a family friend, James Johnson, for help. And Johnson came and stayed at the house. He wanted to see what all this was about. So he stayed. He was waking to the same sounds, same problems. And so that next morning, I guess he finally slept. He told John Bell that there was a spirit just like in the Bible. He didn't specify which one. But after him telling him that, of course, word traveled that there was a witch, that the Bells had a witch in their house. And I guess the apparition liked the attention because it would speak out loud and it would ask, "Who are you and what do you want?" People would ask it that, and it would answer, "I am a spirit that it was happy and have now been disturbed." That is creepy of all. And of course, the spirit offered different explanations as to why it had happened, and a lot of people actually thought that there was a Native American burial ground located on the property. And Drew Bell and a friend disturbed this burial ground. And that might have been why the spirit was upset. And I could see that, But eventually the spirit began to have full conversations. And it would repeat sermons that were given miles apart, word for word. So like it was in many different places at once. And the entity knew the Bible. And it actually got into religious arguments with people, supposedly. The witch also shared gossip about other households, and would actually go to other households, see what's going on, and come back and tell them. So she liked the tea. But it was just very weird for this family. They were still dealing with these problems, and it just wasn't good. Now, John Johnston, the son of the guy who had come to help earlier, James Johnson, the guy who had come to help, his son John devised a test for a witch, something that no one in his family would know about, and they asked the entity what his Dutch step-grandmother in North Carolina would say to the slaves if she thought they did something wrong. The slave actually responded with, "Hut tut, what has happened now?" in their grandmother's accent. That stopped them from asking any more questions. An Englishman stopped by for a visit and wanted to investigate, remarking on his family overseas that the witch, he had dealt with them overseas, and the witch began to mimic his English parents. The early morning, the witch woke him up to the voice of his parents, worried that they had heard his voice as well. The Englishman quickly left, and later wrote that the entity had visited his family in England, and he apologized for such skepticism and told them good luck. So, this witch is doing things. At times, the spirit displayed forms of kindness, especially towards Lucy, which was John Bell's wife, the most perfect woman to walk the earth. The witch would give Lucy fresh fruit and sing her hymns, and showed John Bell Jr. slight respect, set as a measure. Excuse me. So, it didn't like people still, but it did refer to John Bell Sr. as Old Jack. And Old Jack was someone that the witch wanted to kill. And signal this intention through curses, threats, and afflictions. The story climaxes with the Bell patriarch actually being poisoned by the witch. That's right, the witch got old Jack. Afterwards, the entity interrupted the mourners because, of course, back then when you had funerals, you had them at the house. The entity is in the house, and it started singing drinking songs. So yeah, this witch had no shame, and is kind of an ass. In 1821, though, as a result of the witch's entreatment, Betsy Bell called off her engagement to Joshua Gardner. Subsequently, the entity told the family that it was going to leave, but would return in 7 years, in 1828. The witch returned on time to Lucy and her son Richard and Joel with similar activities before, but they didn't encourage it, and the witch decided to leave again. So the witch is apparently true to her word. Now, of course, there was many people in this town, and many of them wanted to investigate and see what was going on. One such being our favorite Tennessean, Andrew Jackson. He was intrigued with the story, and his men were frightened away after traveling to investigate. He wanted to see it. There's also an independent oral tradition in Panola County, Mississippi, where the witch was the ghost of an unpleasant overseer that John Bell might have murdered in North Carolina. Honestly, that would be my best guess. I don't care if it came out of Mississippi or not. I have a feeling that John Bell was not a nice man, and that something came to get him in the afterlife, honestly. So, they're not really sure. I mean, some people think that this is reminiscent of vampire lore. The supernatural powers are attributed to the Tennessee spirit have been compared to that of a jinn out of mythology. Richard Williams Bell wrote that the spirit remained a mystery, and he is actually quoted as saying, "Whether it was witchery such affected people in the past centuries and darker ages, whether some gifted fiend of hellish nature practicing sorcery for selfish enjoyment, or some modern science akin to mesmerism, or some hobgoblin native to the wilds of the country, a disembodied soul shut out of heaven, or an evil spirit like those that Paul drove out of the man into the swine that set them mad, a demon loosed from hell, I cannot decide, nor has anyone yet divined its nature or cause for appearing, and I trust this description of all the monsters of forms and shapes and many tongues will lead experts who may come with a wiser generation to correct conclusion in a satisfactory explanation." That is from Authentic History of Bell Witch, Chapter 8. But of course, many people decided to talk about this, the witch. I mean, the witch was... Everybody wanted to talk about the witch. Everybody thought that there was a witch. John R. Bell actually joined the military after leaving the family, and he actually returned in October 19th, 1820, and crossed the Red River at Port Royal, Tennessee, and stopped at the Murphy residence on the Robertson County to eat dinner. During the stay, Bell was told of a young woman accompanied by a voice. The voice wished for the woman to marry a local man, and thousands traveled to hear it. So John R. Bell decided to go and see about the witch. He is written as saying, "A regular singular circumstance was related to me here. A young girl of about 15 years of age, residing 3 miles from Murphy. A voice accompanies her which says she should marry a man and neighbor. Thousands of persons have visited her to hear this voice. In many instances, it will reply to questions put out. The visitors have left satisfied as their curiosity is piqued before they heard it. Many are under the impression it's ventriloquism upon the hearers by either the girl or her brother, who it seems generally are in the company. The family, though, is respectable." So, I guess he wasn't a Bell related to them. Sorry, he was just another Bell. Apparently there were many of them. But it's just, it captured a lot of people's attention. This is also when the spiritualist movement in the mid-1800s began to find greater expression in women. So some people thought that might have egged on Kate. The Saturday Evening Post even got in on the Bell Witch legend and published the origin of the text, talking about a Tennessee ghost or a Bell ghost, and they didn't post this until 1856 and stated that this happened 30 years before the article was written. So, interesting that it took them 30 years. It says there are 3 human characters in the account, Mr. Bell and his daughter Betsy Bell and Joshua Gardner. The author stated the voice, which spoke freely from all the house in all the directions, would not manifest itself until the lights were extinguished at night. So it's literally the thing that goes bump in the night. The phenomenon attracted wide interest. The author became acquainted with Mr. Gardner, and when the ghost asked how long it would remain until Joshua Gardner and Betsy Bell get married. Now, as you know, they broke off their engagement. The author goes on to state that Betsy Bell had fallen in love with Joshua Gardner and discovered the skill of ventriloquism. Miss Bell began to use her skill to tempt Joshua Gardner to marry her. When they did not marry, the apparition disappeared. One explanation for Kate. And of course, I mean, people have talked about the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch this is what was quoted in by Lucinda Rawls in the 12th chapter of The Authentic History of the Bell Witch. I mean, people were skeptics, so this is what was said. The Bell Witch was and is still a great scapegoat. Every circumstance out of the regular ordinary things is attributed to the witch. It has not been long since a man claiming to be the witch was waylaid and murdered by two men who were cleared, on the plea that the murdered man had bewitched them. So, I mean, people are saying that, it's just a scapegoat. People are just saying it. Like, I almost feel like it's a kind of Robert the Doll. Robert did it, so Kate did it, And I mean, the legend hasn't died, obviously. The legend is still going strong. It just will not die. I mean, you still get people here today, even when I was growing up, that would go and see the Bell Witch Caves and the Bell Witch House. Now, this is the only account that I think is really interesting is the one by Andrew Jackson stating about the witch. The Bell household was strained of resources from visitors, and Jackson brought a wagon load of supplies with men. Nearing the Bell homestead, the wagon stopped and appeared fastened to its position despite considerable effort by Jackson's men to free it. Jackson exclaimed, "By the eternal boys, it is the witch." And a metallic voice was heard, "All right, General, let the wagon move on, and I'll see you again tonight." Outside, this is outside the home. The horses began moving. Instead of camping out, the party actually stayed at the Bell home that evening, and Jackson's party was the witch layer, who boasted of his supernatural exploits. So this was a man in Jackson's party. Tiring of the bravado, Jackson whispered, "By the eternals, I do wish the thing would come. I want to see him run." The entity arrived, taunted the witch slayer to shoot her, but the man's gun would not fire. The witch countered, "I will teach you a lesson," and appeared to beat the man and led them out of the door by his nose. Jackson exclaimed, "By external boys, I've never had so much fun in my life. Beats fighting the British." The witch told Jackson she would uncover another rascal the next night, but Jackson's men fled the house the next morning. So at least one person was having fun. Now, the Bell Witch obviously still persists to this day, but there was a prophecy actually reported in May of 1903 that the witch could return on the centennial of Bell's family arrival into Tennessee, which would have been 1803. In response to that, in August of 1903, no one in the local area was concerned with the return of the Bell Witch, and so they're basically saying nobody cares. And by September, the witch had not returned yet. Charles Bailey Bell, the grandson of John Bell, a neurologist in Nashville, even published a book, The Bell Witch, A Mysterious Spirit, in 1934. In the work, he recounted stories he was told by him by his great-aunt Betsy in her later life, included the account of Andrew Jackson visiting, and a boy being trapped in the Bell Witch Cave. Bell also detailed prophecies he was given by his ancestors in the 1828 visit by the spirit, included a declaration of the witch was set to return again in 1935, 107 years after he had last visited the Bell family. Nobody said if the witch ever came back at that point. I mean, a lot of people have talked about this. In 1937, there were reports of quirky events. Lewis Garrison, who was the owner of the farm that actually included the Bell Witch Cave, so he owned what used to be the Bell family farm. He could hear noises coming from the cave. Bell decedents described the sound as something rubber. Let me see. Rubbing against a house in an unusual manner. A paper-like object that flew out of the door and re-entered through a side door, and faint music from a piano. So very specific. And people would still go out and they would go into these caves. And there was actually a group from a local Epworth League who were reported to have attended a bonfire in the rock quarry near the Bell Witch Cave in July of 1937. The group were joking about the legend when they saw the figure of a woman sitting on top of the cliff over by the cave, which caused many to flee. So maybe don't mess with stuff you don't know about. But according to the newspaper, a minister in the group later claimed to have investigated and discovered in the moonlight, it was moonlight on a rock, causing it to look like a woman. Somebody else, though, reported on that night that the moon was barely visible. Jim Brooks published in 2015 that his mother was actually in attendance at that roast and relates the minister caught the youth up the town after discovering there was no explanation for the figure. So something is still in that area. In November of 1965, an article was published involving an antique rocking chair that is said to be previously owned by Charlie Willett, a Bell descendant. The rocking chair was acquired from Willett's estate by Miss C.J. Adams, owner of an antique store on US 41. The customer sat down in the chair after learning it was not for sale and rocking in a while, asked Miss Adams if she believed in the supernatural. 2 weeks later, the customer's daughter visited the home of Miss Adams and said that her mother had left and visited the Bell Cemetery. A voice told her to stand up and look around. You will find something of much value. After some car trouble, the woman walked into the field, found a black iron kettle and turned it over, and found a pearl buckle in the grass. The woman's daughter reported the jeweler had estimated the buckle to be 160 to 200 years old. So, people are still talking. And there are many other reports of just the Bell family decedents still living in that area and the Bell Witch to this day. I think one of my interesting ones is that there was a visit in 1977. 5 soldiers from nearby Fort Campbell went to the Bell Witch Cave to see what the fuss is about. One soldier was sitting on a rock and expressed skepticism that nothing was actually in the cave, and something grabbed him around the chest. And I mean, there are plenty of stories like this. There was an interesting event in 1986. A staff writer, David Gerard, for the Tennessean, and photographer Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson was actually a member of the National Speleological Society, so they investigated caves. Were given permission to sleep in the cave overnight. While the first cave room, they heard noises from deeper in the cave. Jared estimated it for 30 yards. Subsequently, an unwavering groan repeated with greater volume and accompanied by loud thumps. When it began the third time, the men retreated to the gate entrance. They explored the wiring to the lights, looking for the reason on the noise. They couldn't find any. They went back to the first cave room, but heard a rumble near the entrance. Walking back to the entrance, they realized that the rumble was noise from a jet. As they reached the gate, though, a loud, high-pitched scream emanated from inside the cave. They did not spend the night. Cannot imagine why. Can't imagine why. So, the Bell Witch is still there. You can actually still go visit it to this day. But it's met with skepticism. It's still met with skepticism. Myths and legends can be mistaken for fact and real, especially back then. Events are blurred, and people want to believe what they want to believe. And of course, the Bell Witch has been used a lot in, a lot of movies. There's even a Bell Witch movie, The Legend. There's documentaries, many documentaries. But you can actually still go visit it to this day. You can go visit the Bell Witch Cave to this day in Adams, Tennessee. I've actually been. And it is kind of creepy. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. It is a little creepy. The Bell Witch Cave is actually a cave which stood near the Bell Farm, or stands near where the Bell Farm used to stand. I guess the cave's been there longer than the farm. And the cave is about 490 to 500 feet long. It is privately owned, but you can get a tour during the summer months, and of course in October, because it's Halloween. Gotta go. And of course, the cave is associated with the haunting of the Bell Witch. The cave is where they thought that Kate left the family from the house and fled to the sanctuary of this cave. Is it still there? Who knows? Now, the legend that actually involves the cave is that young Betsy Bell and some of her friends had gone to explore the cave. While they were there, one of the boys crawled out of a hole called into a hole and became stuck. The voice cried out, "I'll get him out." The boy felt hands grasp his feet, and he was pulled out of the hole. The supposed entity, while still visible, gave the young explorers a lecture on reckless cave exploring. Okay, well, all I'm going to say to that is at least somebody cares. But I mean, the cave did not actually play any real, like, in the original stories of the Bell Witch, the cave is not party to any of these stories. Other than possibly the one I told you about the kid getting stuck and getting yelled at for being irresponsible, which okay, yeah, sure, that's a great legend. But I just don't, I don't see it. I mean, maybe there is something in the cave. Maybe there is of course there are Native American spirits in that area. But honestly, it's just a really interesting place to go. It is on the National Register of Historic Places. It is something interesting to do, especially in October, so you can get a little scared. But overall, do we know who the Bell Witch is? No. Do we know that the name supposedly is Kate? Yes. Do we know anything more than this happened really close to 200 years ago at this point? Gosh, it really has been 200 years because it's 23 this year. Do we know that, maybe it was somebody telling tales by the fire to intrigue guests and somebody going in another room and knocking? No. Is it ventriloquism? We don't know. But what I do know is that it's a really cool story and it's a really interesting place to show people interesting parts of Tennessee. Because that is actually a really beautiful area of Tennessee up towards the Kentucky border in Robinson County. It's got a lot of history. It's definitely one of the nicer places you want to check out. But yeah, it's got its own kind of tourism, spooky tourism. So the next time you're in Nashville and you want to get a little bit scared, drive about an hour north and go check out Kate and the Bell Witch. See if you can still get her to answer questions or tell you things, or who knows? Maybe she'll push you in a hole in the cave. Who knows? But, yeah. So, I know that a lot of people have talked or heard about the Bell Witch, so I just wanted to tell you, a little bit more about it. My experience, it's a very interesting place. Go once. I did not get any creepy vibes. I don't like caves, so caves inherently are creepy to me, but I didn't get any sense of foreboding, dreading, something's going to come out of a crevice and attack me. I didn't get anything like that. I just got that it's a cave, and that I don't like caves. So, if you're into caves, definitely go check them out. If you're into hauntings, maybe go out there with some friends and see if you can't get the shit scared out of you. It is what it is. Or go in October, part of your Halloween horror nights for yourself. But, go with a little bit of skepticism, because you never know what you're going to find. All right, guys, thanks for listening this month. I'll be back next month. Next month will be October, so there will be more hauntings from Tennessee, and you all know it. Thank you for listening, guys. If you have a second, I would really appreciate a review. It just kind of helps get the podcast out there. Hopefully, I can go back to every other week instead of monthly here soon. Got to see what life has going for me. I appreciate all your support. Don't forget to check out the social media pages. Don't forget to just be nice to one another, guys. And don't forget to stay country.